Hello, everyone. We welcome you to Glass Academy Webinars 2022. The theme for this year is Ideas in Architecture, where the word ideas expands to I for innovation, D for design thinking, E for emerging trends, A is around the world, and S for sensibility. Today, we have with us architect Anush. Architect Anush is an operation and project management specialist with more than 8 years of experience in healthcare, commercial, and residential construction project management. He specializes in contract administration, project controls, and managing relationships with clients and vendors. In the past, he has managed relationships with clients like Kaiser, Stanford, and UCSF, and the day-to-day operations of a few other residential projects. Welcome, Architect Anush. We are delighted to have you here with us, and we're looking forward to your presentation. Let's hear it from you on your topic. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Radhika. It's a pleasure to be invited to this very important session. And I'm looking forward to share my knowledge with respect to lean construction. And I hope it can provide some useful insight to all the viewers, and we can move towards a sustainable and a big change that is relevant for the construction industry and design industry as a whole. All right, so let's begin. So even before we talk about lean construction, I would like to talk about why we are even discussing lean construction as a whole. As we all are aware that construction industry is kind of the go-to example of an industry which is ridden with bad habits. In this industry, safety is often abysmal, quality is considered optional, delays are kind of the norm, and let's not mention the constant increase in cost, which is kind of a day-to-day headache for everyone and every stakeholder out there. While a lot of this is true, as a lean thinker, I cannot help but see it being a great opportunity. I can actually utilize my lean principles, considering this industry had such a bad reputation of waste. To drive home this point, I would also like to highlight certain important facts that have been captured in the relevant research over the last 45 years. So as you can see on the screen, over the last 40 years, manufacturing productivity has increased, but the construction productivity has literally dropped by 20%. And another one is a research that was conducted by Aalborg University, and it found out that around 80 to 85% of the project ran over budget. And it's not a small over budget mention, it's around 40% of more. So you can imagine the kind of cost overruns that we're having and the losses that all the stakeholders in the project are witnessing. So Radhika, before we dive further into this, I would just like to hear from you. Have you ever faced any kind of a defect, any kind of a challenge, in the design construction industry?
Yes, definitely. So one of the problems or the challenge that lies for us is when we approach the design process. The repetition incurs a lot of expenditure costs and time also there is a lot of resources that are spent, and I think we can manage it effectively and better. And the second challenge which I think we face is related to the the materials, the transportation fees. I think that is also we can think more about which incurs these wastes or yes.
Mm-hmm. All right, no, that's very, very relevant, and I would like to draw everyone's attention towards the relevant points that Radhika has mentioned. So when we talk about lean construction, it's predominantly important for each and every of us to realize what the different type of waste are. And the different kind of waste have been categorized into 8 different types. And I'm going to just walk you through each and every different type of waste and kind of give you some examples. And mind you, it's very important for each and every one of us to understand these different ways, because if you are able to do the value in the identify these different ways, the first kind of a waste is a piece. Then it can be motion, it can be weighting, and it can be extra processing. The second kind of a waste is related to quality, and when we talk about quality, we talk about defects, right? And the third kind of a waste that we have is related to quantity. And quantity refers to inventory, overproduction, and transportation. In the next slide, I will actually walk you through some examples and real life construction experiences to give you a in-depth understanding of what these different wastes are all about. So let's first focus on the defects. So defects is all about, when the product is really not fit for use, when you as a designer or you are from the construction field have to spend extra resources to resolve that issue. And ultimately, the extra effort that's being spent to resolve that issue to make sure that it actually meets the requirement specified by the client is a waste of time and effort. It does not really add value to the stakeholder. The different kind of waste can be rework waste, punch list waste, or the materials that get damaged on the site. The next kind of a waste is an overproduction waste. Overproduction waste kind of refers to a situation where on construction sites, we end up storing excessive material when it's not even required. Or, in our offices, when we keep on stockpiling files and, paperwork unnecessary when it's not even required, right? And what it basically does when we are doing this unnecessary overproduction is we have to spend enormous amount of resources on storage, and which could actually be utilized for something more beneficial. And more examples of this can be, when you're actually replying to every single email that you're receiving in your laptop. So that is an unnecessary waste at the end of the day, because you can actually utilize that time to do something better. Another kind of waste can be printing and filing every single document that you actually receive, which is also does not really add value. So it's important for you to categorize as to what's important or what actually adds value to the end user. The third kind of waste is going to be a waiting waste. So waiting waste refers to when a labor is kind of waiting for equipment, labor is actually waiting for material, or if equipment is actually sitting idle. And what that basically does is it leads to sometimes excess inventory, or it leads to overproduction because the flow in the streamline is not really proper. And the different kind of waiting waste can be you are waiting for RFI responses, you're waiting for equipment to be delivered on site, waiting for material to be delivered on site, you're waiting for proper instructions from the client side, or maybe waiting for proper instructions from your superiors as to how to resolve a specific conflict. Another kind of waste that we often talk about on the site is non-utilization of talent, right? And this is a very, very important waste, the way the industry has been structured, in which the management sits in the office and makes rule for the site without taking due information from the foreman or from the labor who's actually working day to day out there. If this practice is actually followed, it is not really helpful, because at the end of the day, you end up losing 80% of the opportunities which you could have actually realized if you actually brought in the labor force who was doing the work in the first place. So it's really, really important that the talent is actually utilized, and there is proper training and sensitization provided to every single employee within the team, and ensuring that proper collaboration happens. So every single resource, every single employee, every single labor can actually be utilized to their full potential. Another waste that we often talk about is a transportation waste. And transportation waste, as all of us know, is lack of proper planning when the material is, or the product or the information is moving from one place to another, without proper direction, and ultimately time is lost and effort is lost, and ultimately does not create any value to the end user. Different kind of examples that we have for the transportation waste can be handoffs that happen between different trades, multiple reviews that happen on a single approval, and sending and requesting multiple email threads, and most importantly, transportation of material from one place to another without proper planning. Another kind of waste that we refer to is an inventory waste, or inventory management. And this basically refers to storing unnecessary inventory in your warehouse, on your site, when it's not really required. And it often leads to damage of the material. It often leads to unnecessary money being spent on stockpiling it. So it's essential for us to follow the just-in-time process, have a proper look-ahead planning, such that, there is, we only bring in the material, we only use the resources which we actually are going to be needing on the project, rather than stockpiling and increasing our overheads. Another kind of a waste that we often discuss about is the motion. That is unnecessary movement of equipment, unnecessary movement of people, right? So on construction sites, if you visit, you must have often witnessed that, these laborers, they often spend a lot of time figuring out the tools because they do not effectively use any kind of a shadow board. And the second one is the layout has not been done properly on the site, because of which your labor team or your foreman or your superintendent, your site staff has to spend a lot of time to walk around the site because of inefficient layout. And the last waste, one of the most important one, is over processing. And basically what it means is doing more work, adding more components when it's not even required. And I think this is something that we do a lot in construction, in which we need to have an approval on one invoice, and we're going to be having 5 different approvals requested. And that actually leads to more time being spent, or maybe unnecessary formatting of the drawings and reports, which is not really required. Multiple signatures on simple forms, not really required, but a lot of time and effort gets invested on that, where we have to send multiple reminders to the right authority, to the right person, and kind of take it from there. Radhika, do you have any questions on this?
It's very clear, sir. No, not really.
All right. All right. So last but not the least, before I close out, and move on to the next element of this presentation, it's important for us to understand, right? We can deliver a product, we can deliver a project to fit on schedule, to fit, but if it's not going to meet the quality that the end user desired, then our entire effort is going to go down the drain. So it's very, very important for us to make sure that we identify all these different waste and meet the quality that is being prescribed for the project. Some more construction waste statistics that has actually been shared to make sure each and every one of. So just some additional information with respect to the construction waste that gets generated on different construction sites. So there is some information about the amount of construction waste that can actually reach up to 2.2 billion tons by 2025. I mean, that's huge. And then 30% of the building materials which gets delivered on the site can literally end up as waste in a stockpile or dumpster. I mean, that's clear loss of money for all the stakeholders and majorly for the client. So it's important for us to plan effectively and make sure to reduce that waste as much as possible. And most importantly, infrastructure projects like roads and bridges generate like 45% more waste than building demolition projects. Then moving on to the next segment of this lean construction, talking about what lean construction is all about. And even before we do that, I would like to draw your attention towards some success stories that have happened within the lean construction and the lean design domain. So there's a group called Sutter Health based out in California, and deliver a massive $1.5 billion worth of work on project, on budget, and within the stipulated time frame. And they had additional $3 billion of work, which was everything working on plan and on budget. So that's a massive thing, right? No losses and no time lag on that $1.5 billion worth of work. Another success story is from an athlete's village that was constructed during the London Olympics. And by following the no waste lean construction program, the team was able to reduce the wastage by up to 30%. That accounted for around 94,000 pounds at the time. And the last one is kind of an interesting story. It's about from Branch and Associates. They hired a team from the list of subcontractors that they received, and they had an interesting stipulation. And the partners that they selected were willing to let go of their entire fee if they were not able to deliver the project within that stipulated target cost. And mind you, these individuals already had like a $1 million difference with the next subcontractor. So they were so confident in their ability and so confident in the principles of lean that they were willing to take that huge risk. So now, doing a deep dive into what lean construction is all about. So lean construction itself is a very innovative project delivery method, and everything kind of starts with value. It enables you as a stakeholder to understand what the client is really looking for. And it helps you identify the value adding activities and the non value adding activities. So when I talk about the value adding activities, those are the activities which the client is actually looking for and for which that client is actually looking to pay you for. And non value adding activities are just fluff that we as a user or we as a designer, we as a contractor tend to add to the project, just within the processes. And please refer to the 8 different ways that I mentioned to identify the different non-value design process. Then I would also like to draw your attention to this illustration that you see, this kind of a 5-step process or a 5-step understanding with respect to lean construction. So in this, the first step is about identifying the value. So it kind of goes in, you have to have like detailed questionnaires, you need to have detailed conversations with your owners to identify as to what is their need, what exactly is their demand, what exactly are they looking for. So, and once you're able to identify what they're looking for, you have to identify the value adding activities and the non value adding activities and try to eliminate the non value adding activities along with minimizing the cost of the project. The next one, you have to map out. You have to map out all these activities. So it's like you have to create a schedule, okay? And you have to do like continuous iteration, and you have to do collaborate with the different stakeholders and try to figure out as to how we can reduce the cost, how we can cut down the timeline as much as possible. And the next one is establishing a pull plan. So pull plan is another innovation within the lean construction process, which kind of refers to, that rather than doing a push schedule start from day 0 to the final project delivery, then kind of move backward, but while bringing all the different project stakeholders on board and making sure that everyone kind of has a buy-in on that. And what that basically does, that provides a transparent and a clear understanding to every single stakeholder as to what they're accountable for, and helps you to find a realistic schedule, which is dynamic and kind of updating it regularly. And the last but not the least, all these 4 steps are great because these are targeted towards ensuring that you have reduced the waste, you have identified the value. And the last value is about continuous iteration, the continuous improvement, that learning process, having collaborations, having discussions with the team to make sure that, it's not a one-time effort, it's a continuous process. It's a mindset shift that you have to change. And this is kind of a foundation for what lean construction is all about. And what we have to understand that the current definition of lean has a lot of different variations. Like if you literally go on Google, if you do a simple research, you will find a lot of different variations to it. And a major factor for that is the cultural aspect to it. So I'll just share with you some definitions of lean that I have actually identified. So some practitioners mention lean project delivery as a way to design product systems while minimizing waste. Some talk about it as a set of ideas focused on holistic approach of continuous improvement. Some refer it as a production management based delivery system focused on reliable delivery of value. Then a couple of others talk about focused at driving out bad variation to active value. And another important one is the respect and relationship-oriented production management-based approach to project delivery systems. And the last one that I've mentioned, this is kind of one of the official information that is given by Lean Construction Institute. And if you, listen to every single definition that is shared with you, everyone is talking about a couple of things. First, eliminate the waste, maximize the value, enhance the productivity to get that project success that you're looking for. Another important concept that is kind of misunderstood in the word is about a pseudo lean and a real lean. So a lot of people think that we have gone through a couple of seminars and we have something we are good at doing lean, but that's really not correct, because just following that process of continuous improvement without collaboration, without respect for people, does not do justice at the end of the day. There needs to be a continuous collaboration, there needs to be a continuous buy-in with all the stakeholders. And I want to emphasize on the three different stakeholders. One, that every single stakeholder understand what exactly the owner is looking for, what exactly adds value to an owner, And it's important to understand, that person is looking to have a project delivered on time, budget, and obviously to have the value-added activities being delivered. And it's important to communicate to the owner as well that you need to be an equal participant during this entire iterative construction process. From the designer side, it's very, very important to understand what the owner's requirement is and translate it into an industry jargon for all the remaining technical stakeholders to understand. And for the construction professionals, it's important to get a buy-in from the other stakeholders, be it an owner, be it the design team, be it other consultants, and build those long-standing relationships and have that collaborative sharing knowledge framework, so that all the challenges, all the problems are identified initially, and there are minimum lags that happen during the course of the project. So the lean thinking starts with value. It enables you to understand what customers are ready to pay for, so your company can identify value-adding and non-value-adding activities. They can detect and eliminate pure waste and necessary waste activities, and focus on optimizing processes and profitability. In addition, to better understand what the lean process is all about, let's focus on this illustration that you see on the left of the screen. So the process starts first with understanding what the value is from the client's perspective. And it starts with having detailed discussions, detailed questionnaires, surveys with the client to better understand what exactly is the client requirement, and ultimately what exactly is the client willing to pay you for. Secondly, the second step is about mapping that value stream, which kind of focuses on identifying the value-adding activities to the non-value-adding activities. Okay, so yeah, I was on this particular graph. Okay, so lean construction has 5 principles. First is identifying the value from the customer's perspective. And there are many techniques like interviews, surveys, demographic information to understand what the client is willing to pay for and the price that they can really afford for their requirements. The second step is mapping that value stream based on the information that you've received in the step 1. And it's about identifying the value-adding activities to the non-value-adding activities and removing the wasteful non-value-adding activities. The third step is creating a sustainable flow of the value-adding activities to make sure that the process runs smoothly without any glitches, without any lags, without any delays. And it focuses on cross-collaboration between different teams, training the employees to make sure they are multi-skilled and adaptive, leveling the workloads. The next step is about establishing pull. And this is focused on the just-in-time method, reducing wastage like waiting, reducing wastage like overproduction, overprocessing, and while working backwards from the final date to the start of the date and making sure all the stakeholders have a proper buy-in on the project and having a continuous iterative process. As the 4 steps that we discussed were related to creating a value-added activities, removing the waste, the last step focuses on continuous improvement or pursuing the perfection, which is about making sure an environment is created where all stakeholders are confident in voicing their concerns. Experimentation is encouraged. A small incremental failure is acceptable in order to drive innovation and achieve the game-changing improvements that we are looking as an organization. Focusing on this particular slide, the objective is to understand what the lean construction premise is all about. And there have been multiple different variations as to how the lean thinking has been described. Some practitioners talk about lean as a way to design the product systems while minimizing waste. Some mention it as a set of ideas focused on holistic approach of continuous improvement. Some focus on product management-based delivery system focused on reliable delivery of value. Some talk about it as focused at driving out bad variation to achieve the value. And the last most important is the information that is directly from the Lean Construction Institute, which talks about respect and relationship-oriented product management-based approach to project delivery system. But all these definitions have the underlying principle of reducing or eliminating waste, maximizing the value, and improving or enhancing the property, thereby resulting in a successful project delivered as per the customer needs. Another differentiation that it's important for us to understand is what actually is the real lean and what exactly is the pseudo lean. So as you can see from the graphic, the real lean needs to have that integration of respect for people, or integration where every single stakeholder is collaborating with each other. To give a detailed understanding of that, so we have three major stakeholders on every single project. First is the owner. It's important that every stakeholder, every individual on the project clearly understands what are the value-adding activities for our owner. Ultimately, what exactly is the owner willing to pay for? And it's important that other stakeholders communicate to the owner as well that we want you to be an equal, active participant in the project, so that if any issue occurs, you can actually let us know in a timely manner and avoid any kind of a rework, any kind of a delay in the decision-making process. The second major stakeholder on any project is the design team. And the design team role is important from the perspective that they have to define the value based on the information that they have received from the owner and convert it into the technical documentation, technical jargon for the technical stakeholders to clearly understand and have a proper buy-in with the technical team. And the last set of stakeholders are the execution team. And it's important for those stakeholders to respect the perspective of designers, respect the perspective of consultants, owners, and create a knowledge sharing culture so that the issues, problems can actually be identified in a timely manner and minimize the amount of rework or wastage on site. Now let's do a deep dive into a lot of myths that exist in the lean construction industry. This is not a comprehensive list. These are some common myths that I have realized during the course of my career, and I'll try to debunk them to the best of my understanding. So often people talk about that, when we talk about lean, it literally means cheap and ugly buildings. That's really not true. Because it takes no effort to strip down a house, flatten the roof of a house, and remove visual appeal. That is a very easy process to cut down the cost. But that is not what lean is all about. The lean is all about to understand how to preserve the look, as to how to preserve the value of what the client is actually looking for, and thereby reducing the cost. And the principle or the tool or the element, which does it best within the lean domain is called target value design. So that's a keyword that you can do more research on to better understand what target value design is, and to bring home the point that lean really does not mean cheap ugly buildings or that you remove the value adding activities from a project. The second myth that I have often heard about, witnessed, is that lean is just cost cutting. It's really, really not true, because what lean process does it examines each and every project, it examines each and every process, and identifies the wasteful activities, identify the non-value adding activities, the 8 ways that I mentioned, okay? And it tries to remove those. So if you are able to remove the waste from the project, if you're able to remove those non-value adding activities from the project, ultimately your project cost is going to be reduced. And it makes sure that the value is never compromised. The third misconception is that if you're able to reduce the waste, we are able to do lean construction. Again, not true at all. Waste is kind of a byproduct of lean. Waste does not equate to lean construction as such. Uh, as you might be aware, that 57% of construction's true time, which does not really include any material, rework, or so on, is accounted for the waste, all the non-value adding activities. And it's important for us to, identify those non-value adding activities and remove those wastes and, increase the value of the project. The next one is, it is just rebidding and, redoing it to, achieve the lean concept. That's again not really true, because let's say when you ask a bricklayer, or when you ask a plumber, or when you ask any supplier, like maybe an HVAC consultant, to rebid a project, you're asking that person to reduce his sales price, thus reducing his margin on the same labor or material that he's providing on exactly the same scope. That actually is going to be reducing the quality of your project. That does not improve the product or the processes. So that's not what lean about. That's not lean as such, where you are forcing your consultants to, give you some additional discount. That's never lean as such. You can do it alone. One of the most common conceptions, right? That you can just do it alone. You do not need anyone. You have read some books and you can literally do it alone. Never true at all. You need to have that collaborative mindset. You need to have a proper buy-in from all the stakeholders and all the customers, all the stakeholders, be it from the owner side, be it from the consultant side, designers, contractors. Everyone needs to be on the same page on the project to make sure that it's a success. It's a successful lean project. Another one, you're already doing it. One of the most common one that is out there, that you have witnessed some lectures like this lecture that you're witnessing, or you have gone through some conferences, you've read through some articles, and you have just implemented something lean, and you're already doing it. Absolutely incorrect. Lean is not a one-day process. It's a continuous process. It's a long-term commitment. It's an intentional, ongoing philosophy of a continuous process to ensure that there's a change in mindset happening to achieve the desired results that you're looking for. The next one is, lean can be implemented without supplier or trade involvement. Not at all. If you remember, I mentioned about waste, which was about non-utilization of talent. It's exactly that. If you do not involve your trade partners, if you do not involve your site supervisors or site staff in planning your schedules, or identify or innovating any specific site process, you are literally missing out on 80% of the opportunities that you could have actually captured if you had a proper buy-in from all the different stakeholders who are actually doing that work day in and day out on the site. Another one, lean process savings do not count like savings in sticks and bricks. This is a very common misconception that lean is all about theory and we cannot really quantify the savings from the lean. So imagine, okay, you actually are starting a project and there's a purchase order that you're releasing, and it's a continuous cycle. Information is not proper in the purchase order. Information is not proper in the drawings. And you literally have a staff out there to communicate the right information to the different stakeholders, be it from the supplier side, be it from the site side, and accounting for all the expenses, overheads, and everything. You are kind of spending around 5 to 6 lakh on the individual staff to make sure that his only work is to, transfer or communicate the information which has not been documented correctly in the first place. So if that information is documented correctly, you do not really need that person to, do that repeat communication to other stakeholders. So thereby you can understand how the lean process savings can actually account for real monetary savings as well. Lean savings that go direct to the trades do not reduce the builder cost. Absolutely incorrect, because Any project success depends on good relationships. If you're actually going to make your trade life easier, if you're going to actually create process, if you're actually going to create situations where you're actually reducing their repeat trips on site, if you're reducing their rework on site, they're going to give you benefits on future projects, definitely. So it might not come on the same project, but it's going to happen. So it's a continuous iterative process, like I've mentioned. Another one, lean is a project. No, lean is not a project, it's a process. It's a process, it's not a project, like I've mentioned in other sites as well. And you cannot simply hire an expert to lay that fabric of lean on a project and expect, and or maybe send out some of your staff to one-off training and expect lean to happen. It doesn't happen that way. It needs to be a committed, ongoing philosophy where all your stakeholders need to have a proper buy-in, and they need to think about it day in and day out. They need to have a mindset where they are identifying waste on their site, identifying the value and non-value adding activities on the site on a day-to-day basis. Thereby, it says that it's a process. It's never a project. So it's a continuous shift in the mindset. Last common myth is you need specialized software to pull it off. Absolutely wrong. You can literally complete the lean planning through a simple pen and paper or post-it notes. You really, really do not need any software. Softwares definitely make it more efficient. They reduce the time and effort, help in data collaboration, help in sharing that information in a more seamless and effective manner. But software is just an assistive tool out there. It's never like lean process does not really depend on software as such. So I hope I've been able to debunk some of the common myths that are there in the lean construction industry. Now I'm going to give you a very quick checklist that each and every one of you can actually, quickly follow on your project to ascertain if your project is actually following through that lean principle or lean processes, or if your project is not actually following through the lean process. And mind you, this is not a comprehensive list. This is just some kind of a checklist that I have identified over the course of the experience. It can be added, it can be modified, but this can be a good start for you to, ascertain the progress on your projects. So the first question that you need to ask yourself, on your project, when did you last hold a formal structured plan review, including every key supplier and trade before you began a new project? If your answer is yes, if you actually did hold a structured plan review meeting with every single stakeholder, and if every single stakeholder has a very clear understanding what needs to be built, how it needs to be built, there's no question, you're on the right track. The second one, did you meet with a small group of trade partners on a weekly basis in a structured format to work on common issues? And so if your answer is yes, you do have daily stand-up meetings, you do have weekly OACs, that is owner, architects, and contractors come on the common platforms and they interact with each other to sort out those issues. Perfect, you're actually on the right track. Thirdly, do you track every project on a weekly basis, taking inputs from your field trade and using that data to improve your schedule and update your lead times, update your schedule accordingly? If you're doing it regularly on each and every single project with a proper buy-in from your site staff, you're on the right track. The next one, do you really know what a saved day is worth for your organization and what a wasted trip organizations do that? But it's money. It actually creates a mindset where every single stakeholder, every single staff employee within our team is more involved, is more accountable for the success of the project. And another very, very common thing, because the whole theme is about reducing the wastage, right? So can your waste on a project fit in a single low-size dumpster? If it cannot, then something is wrong. You need to have an iterative, you need to go back to the drawing board, you need to work with the team to make sure if this particular project has more wastage, use that as a lesson and go back to the next project, try to reduce that. Ultimately, objective should be that the waste on the project is minimized, that it could literally fit in one single dumpster. The next one, Do your plans and your plans actually have the required detail for each trade to build it right the first time, every time with zero wastage? This is very, very important because a lot of time gets wasted on projects because the information has not been communicated properly. The information is inaccurate, the information is incomplete. So it's important for the design team to spend enough time and resources to have a very, very clear understanding with their construction site team to make sure that they provide the right information the first time and minimize the amount of those RFI discussions, those email threads, because a lot of time gets wasted. And if we're able to provide that information right the first time, it would be a huge success for your organization as a whole. And lastly, do you operate with virtually no late change orders because you manage the customers as well as the building process in a perfect manner? A very, very difficult thing to achieve, but that is kind of an aspirational goal. If you're able to manage a project with literally virtually no change order, then you're doing everything perfect. All right. So I hope this checklist has been helpful. And like I've stated, there can be multiple elements that can be added to it, but it can be a good starting point for you. All right, so I hope I have provided you with a brief understanding as to what Lean is all about, try to debunk some kind of a checklist. Now, I'm sure you must be having a question. This is all good, but how do we even end up implementing it? It seems foreign to us. We have not really learned about it in our curriculum. We have not really heard about it in our day-to-day discussion on the construction side or design offices. Do not worry. I'm going to try to share with you some tricks, tips, so you can try to easily implement these practices on your project. Yeah, now we are talking about the implementation stage. And to give an overall picture of this Lean strategy, Liker, he divided the TPS that's into 4 main parts, which includes 14 principles. And the 4 main parts are philosophy, process, people partners, and problem solving. And there are different principles that are associated with each different categories. And the Toyota way, what the triangle that you're actually seeing over here, it actually has 2 very important elements. The first is the continuous improvement, and which takes in the concept of challenge, Kaizen, Genchi Genbutsu. And please do not worry, I'm going to explain these foreign terms to you. And the next one is respect for people, which embraces respect and teamwork. Okay, so the first section the first element that I spoke about, continuous improvement. Okay, so the first is challenge. So challenge means like whatever do not just be comfortable with that. Okay, challenge your knowledge, challenge your understanding, and try to be a better version of yourself, and try to have that continuous learning mindset. Okay, and always strive for improvement. The second concept in this is Kaizen, which talks about continual organizational learning. And Kaizen is kind of the essence of this whole continuous improvement concept. It's a way of thinking which encourages and empowers everyone to identify where and how even small changes can be made to benefit the business, the team, or the individual projects. The next one is Genchi Genbutsu. So Genchi Genbutsu, it talks about, going and seeing for yourself to better understand the situations, to make sure you have the proper facts and thereby make an informed decision. The next concept or the next element talks about respect for people, which has 2 very important concepts. First is obviously respect, and the next one is teamwork. So teamwork is about collaboration, making sure everyone understands the goal, everyone understands the value adding activity in the project, and strives to work together as a cohesive unit to achieve them. And the next one is respect for people. It is the attitude that regards people's ability to think and innovate. It is about challenging each and every teammate, to perform to the peak ability, be acceptable to minor failures, because because you have to have the mindset for a long-term vision, mindset of innovation, encourage that mindset of visualizing those changes, encourage the mindset of visualizing those challenges. So you, as an organization, can think and innovate and work to and achieve that long-term objective of becoming a continuous learning organization or a successful lean implementation. So this is the LCI project triangle, and this is directly from the Lean Construction Institute, which is the primary institute in disseminating this knowledge with respect to lean construction all over the world. And what this triangle basically talks about is, as you can see, it actually has 3 legs to it. The first leg is an integrated project delivery strategy. The another one is a transformational change. And the third one is a lean project delivery methods and management. So the 3 sides of the triangle include the organizational, commercial terms, which are both underlined by a unique operating system. And there is a big difference in how the lean project differs from a traditional project process. For example, while a traditional driven, lean project delivery is value driven. In traditional project, the operating system is usually push driven, whereas in lean project delivery, it is pull driven. The organization sub-optimizes each part, operating by command and control in a traditional setting, whereas in lean project delivery, our focus is optimizing the whole. The commercial terms are always transactional, whereas in lean project delivery, those are relational terms. Now jumping on to some tools that kind of help you achieve that lean thinking and lean process on your project. So in this presentation, we're not going to be deep diving into every single tool. I'm just going to give you an overview of what this each and every tool is all about and what kind of benefits you can actually think to achieve from this. So the tactical tools, methods, and practices listed in this slide can be applied to any project. Okay? Regardless of any contractual or formal relationship, it can be used to improve the office functions, shop activities, and any process or activity that seeks improvement. One thing to note is lean construction is never about the tool. It's always about the mindset. Therefore, it is imperative to note that change in mindset is essential before applying any tool. Because if that change has not increasing relatedness for the project team. Second, collaborate. That is the big thing, right? Big theme out there. Thirdly, manage the project as a network of micro commitments. Fourth, optimize the whole project, not the pieces. Look at the bigger picture. And lastly, tightly couple learning with action. Like I've stated, right? Continuous learning. You get a learning from one aspect of the project, apply that learning on the next aspect of the project. Share that learning with each other, so that you as a team can build together a continuous cohesive learning exercise and a successful lean implementation process. And there are some very, very important cultural drivers that ensure successful implementation of lean. And it's important to bring in organizational change focused at creating an environment for innovation and continuous improvement. Lean demands an intentional, committed philosophy and process, and involves people and partners and a systematic documented approach to problem solving. Talking about committed leadership, it's all about creating a culture where each and every employee feels empowered to voice their concerns. They do not feel threatened to give out suggestions because of any backlash. They focus on building a long-term commitment to a culture of continuous improvement. The second big cultural driver is focusing on the customer, creating value, removing the waste. Third is about team selection, collaboration, and integrative process. Fourth is quality-driven agenda. And lastly, and most importantly, is respect for people. And to kind of summarize everything that we have discussed and to kind of bring home the point about the lean planning benefits. The lean process seeks to make small incremental change in processes to improve speed, efficiency, and quality of the product or service delivered to customers. The benefits can be greater productivity, smooth operations, greater flexibility and responsiveness to meet the demands of customers because of good planning, eliminating defects, improving product quality, reducing lead time, increase customer satisfaction, improve staff morale, safer working environment due to leveling of workload and constraint removed, less inventory or clutter using 5S method, and ultimately, all these benefits ultimately boost your bottom line because increased productivity and smoother operations allow you to make more product for the same overheads. Greater flexibility and responsiveness mean you do not have to stockpile materials and do not need to create in bulk and or have expensive inventory which can be damaged or can go to waste. Fewer defects immediately add to your profit, and better quality products available at the need of the customer means happy customers will buy you again and again. Okay. All right. So we're going to just close this out with a quick case study. So this is a research that was conducted in the Lean community back in 2013. And it was identified that the biggest hindrance to implementation of Lean was inadequate knowledge. As you can see, there are different factors like reluctance in the union, inadequate information, cost-benefit analysis, lack of standards, perception that implementing Lean is time-consuming, inadequate industry understanding, employee resistance, perceptions that implementation is complex, lack of collaboration and teamwork. But the most important that stood out is inadequate knowledge. And this was kind of the challenge with the knowledge factor. The principles were there and the construction projects were there, but there was no framework. There was no proper procedure or framework created which helped to connect those principles to the construction projects. And it was rightly supported by this statement from Esquero that development of real case studies is an ideal approach to impart knowledge in construction, because theory is good, but if you're not able to connect it to real projects, research has tried to do that. We created framework, for different principles. So when we talk about communication and collaboration, so there's this exercise which kind of enhances that communication and collaboration. When we talk about target value design, which I mentioned to you in one of the myths, right? We kind of need to think about the target cost of the project. So all the stakeholders kind of come together like this. So this is another exercise that we do with respect to target value design to better understand, what the final target what's the final target. This one is target value design. This particular exercise that you see is on bringing all stakeholders. Yeah, each and every one is able to identify the value-adding and non-value-adding activities as per the customer needs and deliver the project within the target cost in Boston in the year of exposed and the actual case studies. So I've just taken a snapshot of this particular case, this particular framework. So there's this 5S simulation, and it actually has certain principles, some objectives from these principles. And then there are certain case studies where these principles have been implemented. So there's a concept called site safety index, which is kind of a ratio of site safety observations accurate to the total number of site safety observations. Okay, and obviously a situation where everything is compliant. And if you actually see this particular graph on the right, you can see that when this exercise started, it was at 87.3%. There was a minor dip in because the training had started. So there was, that learning curve needed to be there. And site safety index rose by 3.4%, from month one to month 5. And this is kind of the benefit of, when we're talking about lean construction, lean principles. And this is what this framework has basically done. It has actually brought in the principles and tried to bind it to actual case studies. So you're able to understand how each and every principle adds to the real value on actual projects. Okay. And I know we are kind of short of time, so we cannot go in depth into case studies, but you can actually refer to this case study to get a better understanding on, how the different principles can actually be applied to actual construction projects and how the value can actually be created. Okay. Thank you so much, Radhika.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an informative presentation. I'm sure our viewers must have learned a lot from your presentation and as a result must be curious to know more. Myself included, I would like to take this opportunity to ask you a few questions. My question here is, lean construction is an emerging trend in architecture. Can you suggest some effective strategies that you use towards creating awareness about it or disproving the myth? Like some practices or examples that would motivate people in the field to adopt this mode of construction?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. So I'm going to actually share my screen again and take you through an important and interesting graphic. And if you notice this graphic, carefully, this kind of summarizes a lot what I've actually spoken about. So it talks about lean construction, waste, reducing time and effort, and increasing the value. And then value is added by different factors. So there's a digital communication collaboration segment, there's an eliminating waste segment and optimizing the work planning section, modular construction, look at scheduling, and improving workflow. I'm not going to go into too much depth on this, but I just want your viewers to, you know, have this graphic as a reference, future reference, to better understand what lean construction is all about and how to better identify the value in non-value adding activities. And coming back to your question as to how we can, increase the familiarity and implementation. Understand that there are three distinct groups, with respect to, understanding of lean construction. So there is one set of group which has no understanding of lean construction. They are unfamiliar or with lean construction, and it is because the construction industry as a whole does not really accept change that easily, and that is one set of group that has no understanding of it. There's a second set of group that has actually maybe read some books or has actually listened about lean construction but is really not implementing it. And the biggest reason for that is the fear of failures. The fear of experimentation. They do not want to accept the changes. They do not want to take in that extra effort or the extra work that actually comes in with that change. And they do not want to use their resources in experimentation because of the fear of failure. So that's the second category of group. And the third category of group, which has actually implemented it, but they have actually not implemented it fully. They have implemented it partially. And I can actually give you some examples on that. The need of implementation kind of diminishes because of wrong partial implementation, poorly conceived concepts, wrong selection of lean tools, one of the biggest factors, half-hearted implementation, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it because your management has actually pushed you to do it. Then lack of cultural acceptance, your mindset is not there to do it. Then low commitment from the management, that they have just maybe executed a workshop, but there is no continuous learning, iterative process happening. There is not a consensus within the management that there is an importance of accepting lean principle as a whole. So these are the three different segments, within our design construction industry with respect to understanding of lean. So am I able to draw the differentiation for you? Is this kind of clear to you before I jump into how we can, overcome these barriers? Does that make sense to you, Radhika?
Yes, sir,
Yes.
definitely.
Okay. All right. So for the, I would say that for the group one, which had no understanding or which lacked any familiarity with lean, what we can basically do is we can maybe, have a lot of case studies for them. We can share with them some, invite them to construction forums or, include that curriculum in the universities or college level, convincing the project owners, that lean is important so that there is some kind of a pressure created from their end. Informing organization of the competitive advantage offered by lean over existing traditional practices, and educating construction organization about the waste and efficiencies using the existing management techniques. That's for your barrier one, who have no understanding of it. So you need to educate them. You need to at least make them a bit familiar with the lean concept. The strategy for group two can be to reduce the fear of reservation by highlighting the positivity achieved through lean concepts. Okay, analyze the approach towards lean rather than results during initial implementation, encouraging them to accept those small failures and have their mindset towards that long-term success. Get help from external coaches and facilitators, okay? Using computer modeling simulation techniques, to bring home the point, using lean simulation techniques so that they can actually see in real time what the benefits are, okay? And other strategies that could be identified for the group 3 who have actually done some trainings, who have implemented, but they have not implemented it fully. Lean construction techniques should be gradually implemented. It should not be that you've actually gone to a conference, you've actually read a book, and you do a 0 to 100 kind of an implementation from day one. It needs to be a continuous step-by-step process, okay? Obviously, hire external facilitators, have them guide you through that process step-by-step. Develop a appropriate collaborative project delivery system for lean projects, like IPD system, an IFOA agreement system, which are kind of industry standard in the West, but not that much common in India as of now. Then involving all project partners as early as possible, especially during the planning and design process. Use building information modeling to facilitate lean implementation, especially during planning and design sessions, okay? And lastly, selecting the most appropriate tools based on having a clear understanding of what the challenge is and which tool aligns with that particular challenge, okay? So this is kind of a brief understanding that I can actually provide you as to how we can try to mitigate that unfamiliarity or lack of understanding with respect to lean for the 3 set of audience that we have within the industry.
Thank you for explaining this with the help of examples and even breaking it down to various groups to make it easy to understand for everyone. There's still so much to learn, but we have reached towards the end of the session. The session was very insightful, and on behalf of all of us at Glass Academy and its host, I would like to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, Radhika, thank you so much.